It all started on what seemed like an ordinary morning, the kind of morning where the sun peeks lazily through your blinds, and you think everything will go just as usual. I woke up, stretched, and made my coffee, steam curling from the cup, the aroma comforting me. I glanced at my phone, and that's when it hit me. At first, I thought I was imagining things. Maybe I had overslept, maybe my mind was playing tricks. But then, as I scrolled through my messages, it became horrifyingly clear. Every single one of them was laughing. My colleagues, my friends, even members of my own family. They were all talking about me. And the worst part? They didn't even try to hide it. One message caught my eye. Can you believe she's still pretending? Another, watch her fail today, it's going to be hilarious. I felt a chill run down my spine, a weight pressing on my chest. How could they all be against me? What had I done to deserve this? My hand shook slightly as I sipped my coffee. I tried to laugh it off, tell myself it was just a coincidence. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I forced myself to get dressed and decided to go to the office, telling myself I could ignore it, that I could rise above petty cruelty. But as soon as I opened the door and stepped inside, the atmosphere hit me like a wave. The room went silent. For a moment, I thought I had imagined it. Then I heard it a single laugh. Soft at first, almost polite, but it quickly grew into a chorus. My boss, my coworkers, even the new intern, they were all smirking at me, whispering behind their hands, trying desperately not to be obvious. I froze, unsure if I should confront them or turn around and leave. But even as I stood there, paralyzed by shock and disbelief, I realized something far worse. They thought I didn't know. They thought I was clueless, blind to their whispers, deaf to their jokes. They thought they could humiliate me without consequence. I took a deep breath. My chest tightened. I felt a surge of anger, of betrayal, but also something else. Something quiet, simmering, and dangerous. I would not let this go. No, I would not be the victim of their cruelty. And then I remembered something I had kept hidden for years, a secret they had laughed at, mocked in hushed tones, thinking it was harmless. But they were wrong. That secret wasn't just mine. It was my shield, my power, my chance to turn the tables completely. I glanced around the room, each face blurred with mockery and arrogance. My mind raced. I knew I couldn't act hastily. I couldn't let anger blind me. I needed a plan, a quiet, careful strategy. Because revenge, I realized, isn't about shouting or confronting. It's about patience. It's about timing. It's about making them see, without mercy, that they had underestimated the wrong person. I left the office that day with a calm smile, though inside I was a storm. Each laugh they had shared, each smirk, each whisper, they fueled me. And deep down, I promised myself this. They would regret the day they decided to laugh at me. As I drove home, I replayed every interaction, every subtle insult, every moment I had brushed off as harmless. Nothing would escape me now. I would remember it all and I would use it all. That evening, I sat at my desk, poured a glass of wine, and made notes. Every ally they had ignored, every misstep they had made, every weakness they had shown, I cataloged it all. And then I added my secret to the list. The one thing they never suspected, the one thing that would make them freeze in disbelief when the time came. By the end of the night, I had a plan. Not just to reclaim my dignity, but to reveal the truth in a way that would leave them speechless. They had laughed at me. They had underestimated me. And they had no idea what was coming next. Because sometimes the most dangerous power isn't anger, and it isn't confrontation. It's the quiet patience of someone who has been mocked, betrayed, and underestimated, and who has been preparing, silently, for the perfect moment to reveal their strength. Before that day, my life had been a careful balance of work, trust, and hope. I had worked hard, really hard. Long hours stretched into the night, weekends vanished, and countless sacrifices were made quietly, without recognition. Every morning, I reminded myself why I kept pushing. The future I wanted, the life I dreamed of, the career I was building. I had saved money, invested wisely, and built a small but promising career. It wasn't flashy, but it had potential. I trusted people. I opened my heart, believing in honesty, fairness, and the idea that doing the right thing would keep me safe. But the truth is, sometimes trust can blind you. Looking back, I see the subtle signs, now tiny cracks that I chose to ignore. Little jokes, remarks that seemed harmless at the time, whispers that I thought were harmless office chatter, comments about how slow I was, how I could never handle bigger responsibilities. I dismissed them. I told myself I was imagining things, that maybe I was being too sensitive, overthinking, or reading too much into idle words. And then came the big project, the one everyone said would define me, the one they all claimed would make or break my career. I poured my soul into it. Late nights became routine. Weekends disappeared. Every detail was double-checked, every presentation slide meticulously crafted. I wanted it to succeed not just for myself, but for the team, for the company, for the people who believed in me. And yet, I should have known. On the day of the presentation, I walked into the room expecting acknowledgement, maybe even applause. But instead, I was met with sneers, sarcastic claps, and quiet laughter. Faces I had trusted, colleagues I had respected, even the friends I thought had my back, they were mocking me openly. Rumors that I was incompetent, incapable, unworthy, they'd been spreading them all along. Every glance, every whispered comment, every smirk was meant to humiliate me. For a moment, I froze. My chest tightened. My hands trembled. I felt anger, disbelief, and a deep sadness that clawed at me. This wasn't just office politics. This was personal. They wanted to see me fail. And they thought they could. I sat at my desk that evening, replaying every interaction in my mind. One thought about the early meetings where subtle remarks had been made, about the emails that never reached me, the important decisions I wasn't included in, and the ways I had been undermined without realizing it. Every joke now felt like a deliberate dagger. Every harmless comment was a thread in a tapestry of betrayal. It wasn't just about work. It was about trust. The people I had counted on, the people I had opened myself to, they'd all been laughing behind my back. And it hurt more than anything I'd ever experienced. The betrayal was sharp, like ice in my veins. And for a while, I questioned myself. Maybe I wasn't capable. Maybe I had been naive to trust. Maybe all of this was my fault. But then, amid the hurt and anger, something began to stir a quiet fire, simmering under the surface. It started as a thought, then grew into determination. I realized that I didn't need to prove myself to anyone. I didn't need their approval or their recognition. I had a choice. I could let them break me, or I could rise. And that's when I remembered something, a secret I had been holding quietly. A part of my life they could never see, a part of me they assumed was insignificant. They laughed at it. They mocked it. They thought it was harmless, that it wouldn't matter. But they were wrong. That secret had been growing quietly, deliberately, for years. It was my shield, my power, my safety net. And now, in that moment of betrayal, it became my weapon not to destroy them, but to prove to myself, and eventually to them, that I was far stronger than they had ever imagined. As I sat in the quiet of my apartment that night, the world outside buzzing and oblivious, I began to map it all out. Every slight, every rumor, every whisper of betrayal, it became fuel. Every underestimation, every sneer, it became motivation. I started planning quietly, carefully, knowing that when the time came, the laughter would stop. The fire in me grew with every hour. I knew one thing for certain. I would not remain a victim. I would not allow mockery and betrayal to define me. I would show them what patience, strategy, and quiet strength could accomplish, because sometimes the most powerful victories are not loud or obvious. Sometimes they're quiet, precise, and unforgettable. And this is going to be unforgettable. After that day, the images haunted me. Every laugh, every smirk, every whisper replayed in my mind like a cruel film I couldn't pause. I kept reliving the presentation over and over, analyzing every detail, searching for some clue, some reason that could explain why people I trusted would treat me this way. At first, I questioned myself. Maybe I had misread the situation. Maybe I had been too sensitive. Maybe I truly was not capable, not deserving of the success I had worked so tirelessly to achieve. For a while, self-doubt clouded my thoughts, but the more I reflected, the clearer the truth became. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. Every late-night email I never received, every forgotten phone call, every invitation I wasn't sent, every small act of exclusion, it was all deliberate. They had been working quietly, behind my back, systematically isolating me, undermining my confidence, and mocking me in ways I hadn't even suspected. Even some family members I thought were allies had been complicit. Faces I had trusted, smiles I had believed were genuine now revealed themselves as masks, carefully worn to deceive me. And my friends, the ones I confided in, the ones I thought had my back, they were laughing too. Quietly, behind closed doors. It felt like I had been living in a house of mirrors, seeing only reflections that were false. I felt trapped. I questioned my own judgment, my instincts, even my worth. For nights, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the sting of betrayal deep in my chest. Every corner of my life seemed to whisper one message: I was alone. And yet, something inside me shifted. Anger started to simmer, not uncontrolled, not desperate, but deliberate. It was a quiet, burning heat, a determination that would not be ignored. Betrayal, instead of crushing me, became fuel. I realized that I didn't need to confront them with rage. I didn't need to beg for their respect. I didn't need to prove myself to people who had spent years underestimating me because I had something they didn't know, a secret, something I cultivated quietly, patiently, over years. Something that had grown in the shadows while they laughed, mocked, and dismissed me. Something powerful enough to change the entire narrative, and suddenly the world didn't feel quite so suffocating anymore. The fear and self-doubt began to recede, replaced with clarity and focus. I started to see the pattern clearly, the way they had underestimated me, the ways in which they had tried to manipulate and control me. I cataloged it all in my mind, piece by piece, until I could see the full picture, who had betrayed me, how they had done it, and why they thought they could get away with it. And then I asked myself a simple, powerful question. Asterisk, what would happen if I revealed the truth? Asterisk, not with anger, not with shouting or accusations, but with calm precision, with undeniable evidence, with proof that I was far stronger, smarter, and more capable than they'd had ever imagined. I began planning quietly. I watched and listened, making note of every weakness, every underestimation, every careless assumption they made. I reached out to those they had ignored, those who had quietly admired my work but were powerless to speak up. Slowly, subtly, I began building a network of allies and resources that would amplify my power, without them ever suspecting. And every day, I felt the fire grow. The anger, the betrayal, it was no longer something that weighed me down. It was energy, focus, motivation. Every smirk they had thrown at me, every whispered insult, every joke at my expense, became fuel for a plan they would never see coming. They thought they had won. They thought they had me trapped, that they didn't know about the secret I had been hiding. And when the time came, the tables would turn completely. I began to rehearse in my mind how it would unfold, how I would remain calm, confident, and composed, revealing the truth not with threats, not with rage, but with undeniable proof. The shock on their faces, the sudden silence, the disbelief. That would be my victory, not revenge for its own sake, but justice, clarity, and reclaiming the life I had been denied for so long. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt hope. Real hope. I felt a quiet excitement, a controlled thrill, knowing that everything they had laughed at, everything they had dismissed, was about to change forever. And as I lay awake that night, planning my next moves, I made a promise to myself. Asterisk, I will not be broken. I will not be humiliated. And when they least expect it, I will reveal the truth. And nothing will ever be the same. Asterisk, because betrayal, I realized, is only as powerful as you allow it to be. And I was done being powerless. This was not just a story of anger or revenge. It was the beginning of a transformation. The moment I embraced the secret they didn't know, the moment I decided to reclaim control, my entire perspective shifted. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a strategist, a force to be reckoned with, and that is when the real plan began. This was the part they could never have imagined. For years, while they gossiped in the break room, laughed behind my back, and tried to shut me out of meetings, I was quietly building something extraordinary. Not in the office, not in front of anyone, but behind closed doors, in the quiet hours of the night when the rest of the world slept. I had always believed in being prepared. Maybe it came from growing up with little, or from years of watching others climb by stepping on people like me. I learned early that if I wanted stability, I couldn't rely on anyone else. So, while they were busy showing off, posting about their promotions and vacations, I was learning, studying, and investing. They saw a quiet worker who stayed late at her desk. What they didn't see was what I was doing with that time. Every hour I spent alone wasn't wasted, it was an investment. I was building my own safety net, my independence, my freedom. It started small. A little side project, a freelance client here and there. Then an investment in a company no one believed in at the time. Then another. Slowly, silently, my hidden world began to grow. I built relationships, real ones, with people who valued integrity over titles. I connected with mentors who saw my potential when others mocked me. I learned how to make my own opportunities instead of waiting for permission. They thought I was invisible. But while they ignored me, I was watching, listening, and learning everything, every system, every weakness, every habit of the people who controlled the office. I knew which clients they took for granted. I knew where the inefficiencies were buried. I knew which deals were falling apart long before they did. And I knew one simple truth. The people who laugh the loudest often fall the hardest. When I walked out of that humiliating presentation, I didn't walk away defeated. I walked away with a plan. You see, they thought I had lost everything. But the truth was, I had already built something they could never take from me. Over the past few years, while they competed for titles, I had quietly become an investor in several small startups companies that were growing fast. Companies that were hungry, passionate, and disruptive. One of them, ironically, was about to become a major supplier for our own company, and I was a silent partner. Yes, they didn't know it. But while they mocked me, I held a stake in the very foundation of their future. I can still remember the night I realized how poetic it all was. I was sitting at my kitchen table, my laptop open, going through quarterly reports. One of the startups had just signed a new client. My eyes widened as I saw the name. It was them, my own company, my former employer. For a long moment I sat there, just breathing, trying to process the irony. The same people who had laughed at me, excluded me, and called me incompetent were now relying on a company that I partially owned, and that's when I smiled. Not out of arrogance, but because fate had an exquisite sense of timing. I didn't act right away. No, I waited. I watched as the partnership deepened. I watched as they signed contracts, committed budgets, and tied themselves to this new supplier. All while I stayed silent, my name hidden behind layers of investment structures and holding companies. Then one day, the opportunity came. The company's board announced a strategic partnership deal. It was going to be their biggest move of the year. They sent out a press release, bragging about innovation and collaboration. My former colleagues, those same faces that had sneered at me, were quoted in articles, smiling for cameras. Taking credit, they had no idea that the real power behind their new partner was me. I attended the signing event, not as their employee, but as one of the unseen investors. I walked through the lobby quietly, my head held high, while they rushed past me without even recognizing who I was. It was almost poetic how easily people forget the ones they underestimate. And when I took my seat in the back, watching them on stage, I realized something profound. I didn't need R. Others acted like they had supported me all along. But I didn't respond, because this wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about proving myself right. I had built something real. Something lasting. Something that no rumor, no betrayal, no humiliation could ever take away. And when I looked back at everything, the laughter, the whispers, the betrayal, I realized it had all been necessary. Every cruel moment had pushed me further, sharper, stronger. Without their mockery, I might never have built what I did. Without their betrayal, I might never have found the courage to rely on myself completely. That was the secret they never expected. I wasn't destroyed. I was reborn. The woman they laughed at had become the woman who now held the power to decide their future. And the best part? I didn't need to hurt them. I didn't need to take anything away. The truth itself was enough. Watching their pride crumble as they realized who I had become, that was all the justice I needed. I didn't just survive their betrayal. I thrived because of it. I had turned pain into purpose, doubt into drive, and humiliation into quiet triumph. And as I sat alone that night, a cup of tea in my hands, I whispered to myself, let them laugh. They'll never understand that the storm they tried to destroy me with was the same storm that made me unstoppable. Perfect. Let's expand section 5. The plan, quietly setting the stage into a full cinematic, emotional and suspenseful voiceover sequence. Approximately 1,400 to 1,500 words. 10 to 15 minutes. This section emphasizes strategy, quiet power, and the slow build-up to the reveal. I didn't storm into the office, fist clenched or voice raised. That would have been too obvious. That would have been the kind of dramatic confrontation they expected. The kind of overreaction that would let them dismiss me again. No, I'd learned long ago that true power is often invisible, subtle, and patient. So instead, I moved quietly. I reached out to people they had overlooked, people who had been marginalized, mocked, or ignored. People who had quietly admired my work but felt powerless to speak. I connected with them not as a savior or a leader, but as someone who understood what it felt like to be underestimated. Slowly, deliberately, I built a network of allies who respected integrity, loyalty, and intelligence over titles and appearances. At the same time, I leveraged my secret. My investments, my knowledge, my careful planning, all of it. I strengthened my position without anyone noticing. I wasn't building an empire for recognition. I was building it to reclaim control, to reclaim my dignity, to prove to myself what I was capable of. Every step was deliberate. Every move calculated. I began to let the world see me differently, but not too obviously. Small, subtle shifts in demeanor. A quiet confidence in meetings. A suggestion that hinted at my capability. A well-prepared idea that made people pause for a moment longer than usual. Nothing too flashy, nothing to draw immediate attention. Just enough to let those who knew me see that something had changed. At first, they laughed. Oh, she's pretending again. I could hear them whispering in the hallways. She fizzled out like always. But the smile on my face was different this time. It wasn't fear. It wasn't desperation. It was quiet, controlled, deliberate confidence. I continued to gather information. I observed their routines, their habits, the way they underestimated others. I mapped out their weaknesses. I cataloged every slight, every mistake, every instance where they had shown arrogance or carelessness. I began using my secret network to my advantage. People I had helped in the past quietly returned favors. Mentors gave me advice. Colleagues from other departments began to consult me, recognizing my talent. And slowly, quietly, the ripple started. I arranged small wins that seemed accidental. A successful client pitch here, a compliment from a superior there. Nothing spectacular, just enough to make people start noticing but not yet alarmed. Then came the first real test. A colleague, one of the loudest critics, challenged an idea I had suggested weeks ago, an idea they had previously dismissed outright. They presented it to management as their own, thinking I wouldn't notice. But I had prepared for this moment. With calm, unwavering confidence, I presented the data, the research, the logic behind my original idea. Management's eyes widened. Recognition followed. The colleague, previously smug and assured, stammered, caught off guard. And in that moment, I saw the tiniest flicker of doubt, a crack in their armor. I smiled quietly to myself. That moment was small, almost invisible to anyone else, but it was the first domino. A single event that set everything else into motion. Over the next few weeks, I continued. I created situations where my skills and knowledge were undeniable, but in ways that seemed natural, unforced, almost accidental. Each success built credibility. Each observation sharpened my strategy. I didn't need to confront anyone directly. The truth was becoming visible on its own dot, and all the while, I remained calm, composed. I let them continue underestimating me. Let them continue laughing. Let them believe they were safe in their mockery and arrogance, because the more they laughed, the more they revealed their weaknesses. The more they assumed, the more openings they provided. I remember one particular afternoon, watching them scramble to cover a mistake they had made, a mistake they didn't want anyone else to see. I smiled quietly from my corner, silently noting every detail, every flaw, every assumption. It wasn't schadenfreude. It was strategy. It was patience. It was power dot, and slowly the office began to shift. People started noticing my competence. Small successes became harder to ignore. My allies in other departments quietly championed me. The whispers of doubt that had once been all about me were now tinged with curiosity, and, eventually respect. They still laughed behind closed doors. They still mocked me in corners. But their laughter was quieter now, more hesitant, more uncertain. The confidence that had once defined them began to falter. They didn't realize it yet, but the game had changed and the rules were no longer theirs to control. Every move I made was deliberate. I didn't need to expose everything all at once. Quietly, subtly, the stage was set. Every person who had doubted me, every person who had betrayed me, would soon see the truth. But it would be revealed on my terms, at my timing, with maximum impact. I became like a shadow in the office, always present, quietly powerful, underestimated but not unseen. I knew the exact moment when each piece of the puzzle would fall into place, when the secret I had guarded so carefully would finally shift the balance. And in the midst of it all, I learned something essential. True power is patience. True strength is quiet. And revenge, real revenge, isn't about shouting. It's about precision, timing, and letting the world witness the results of your resilience. They thought they had won. They thought they had seen the last of me. But the stage was ready, the pieces were in place. And the reveal, the moment that would change everything, was coming. And when it did, they would never forget it. Perfect setup. Let's expand section 6. The climax, revealing the secret, into a full cinematic narration. 1,500 words. 12 to 15 minutes, with emotional beats, suspense, and voiceover-ready dialogue. Making the moment dramatic yet brand safe for YouTube. I could feel it in the air the moment I stepped into the building. There was a subtle tension, the kind that creeps in unnoticed but hits you in your chest. Everyone was waiting, but not for the reason they thought. They had prepared their jokes, their whispers, their sarcastic smiles, ready to watch me falter. I could sense it in the way they shifted in their seats, the sideways glances, the subtle smirks, but I was calm, composed, ready dot as I walked into the conference room. I held my head high. The chatter stopped the moment I entered. A silence fell over the room, not the respectful silence of attention, but the curious, skeptical silence of people who thought they had already won. I set up my laptop, my notes, everything carefully arranged. My hands were steady, my breathing controlled. I allowed them to settle into their assumptions. That this would be just another failed attempt, another demonstration of my supposed incompetence, and then I began. I started slowly, outlining the project, the progress we had made, the challenges that had been overcome. My voice was calm, measured, almost conversational. But beneath it, every word carried weight. Every sentence a quiet assertion of the truth they had refused to acknowledge. Then, I revealed the first piece of proof. The data. The numbers. The results. Charts, graphs, projections, everything they had dismissed as insignificant or impossible. I showed them that every strategy, every idea, every solution I had proposed had been not only valid but wildly effective. The room went still. I watched as their faces changed. Curiosity, confusion, and then slowly, shock. They had prepared to laugh. They had prepared to whisper. They had assumed I would fail. And now, everything they thought they knew was crumbling in front of their eyes. I continued, carefully layering evidence, showing connections, results, and outcomes that no one had anticipated. Every move they had made to undermine me only highlighted how far ahead I had been. I had turned their underestimation into proof of my capability. A manager who had once rolled her eyes at my suggestions now looked at me, silent, uncertain. A colleague who had spread rumors about my incompetence froze mid-sentence, realizing that their assumptions were not just wrong, they were catastrophic errors in judgment. Whispers stopped. Laughter vanished. Every smirk, every sarcastic remark, every dismissive glance, they had no defense. The room was filled with silence heavy enough to feel in my chest. I paused, letting the silence settle, letting them absorb the truth. Then I revealed the part that would hit hardest, the secret network, the investments, the connections that had been quietly supporting my vision. The very projects they had mocked were thriving, backed by unseen alliances that they had underestimated entirely. They gasped, some quietly, others audibly. Eyes widened, fingers clutched at papers. One by one, they realized the depth of the miscalculation. The woman they had tried to humiliate, the one they assumed was incapable of leading, had orchestrated a quiet empire of competence, foresight, and resilience. And it wasn't just success. It was undeniable proof. A meticulous, step-by-step demonstration that they had been wrong, so wrong they couldn't even argue it. I saw it in their expressions. Shock, disbelief, and the tiniest flicker of fear, the fear of realizing that underestimation is dangerous. That mockery can blind you to someone else's strength. And yet, I didn't gloat. I didn't raise my voice or make a dramatic scene. There was no anger in my delivery, only calm authority. Because the truth doesn't need embellishment. The truth speaks for itself. I watched as they tried to process it, as they whispered to each other, trying to rationalize, to explain away the impossible. And slowly, I could feel the shift, the energy in the room changing. Respect replacing doubt. Curiosity replacing mockery. The very people who had laughed at me were now forced to acknowledge my competence. It was a quiet, powerful victory. Not a shout of revenge, but a demonstration of mastery and patience. And then, the final moment came. I revealed the ultimate piece, the connection to projects and companies they had depended on, unknowingly tied to my influence and investments. Their faces went pale as they realized how deeply intertwined I was in their supposed world. Every contract they signed, every deal they had praised, every system they relied upon, there I was, quietly shaping outcomes, making progress, building success that they thought was theirs alone. And just like that, the tables were turned. One by one, they began to understand that the woman they had laughed at, dismissed, and betrayed was the same woman, who now held the power to influence the course of their future. It was not instant humiliation. It was not a dramatic confrontation. It was far more satisfying than that. The power was in their realization, the slow, creeping understanding that they had been wrong all along. I paused, letting the weight of the revelation settle. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the projector and the soft rustle of papers. I looked at each face, calm, collected, satisfied in a quiet, personal way. And in that moment, I realized the most important lesson: patience and belief in oneself can accomplish far more than anger or confrontation ever could. The strategy, the preparation, the quiet work done behind the scenes, all of it mattered more than a single outburst or an immediate retaliation. They had tried to break me, to humiliate me, to silence me. And yet, here I was, proof that resilience and intelligence can turn even the deepest betrayal into triumph. As the meeting ended, I walked out of the room, head held high. There were no cheers, no applause, just the quiet recognition of the undeniable truth. And that was enough. Because sometimes the greatest revenge is simply being right and letting the world see it without needing to shout. And in that moment, I knew one thing with complete certainty: I had not just survived. I had risen. I had turned betrayal into a stepping stone, mockery into motivation, and underestimation into power. I had revealed the secret they could never have expected, and it changed everything. Perfect. Let's expand section 7. The aftermath, watching the reactions. Into a full cinematic narration. 1,400 to 1,500 words. 12 to 15 minutes. Keeping the dramatic, emotional, and reflective storytelling style for voiceover. The aftermath was surreal. The very next day, the office felt different, though nothing had changed physically. The layout was the same, the desks the same, the fluorescent lights flickering just as they always had. But the energy, the invisible tension, the unspoken acknowledgement was palpable. Some people tried to apologize. Their voices were quiet, hesitant, as if saying the words too loudly might shatter the fragile illusion of control they had clung to for so long. I didn't realize. We were wrong, one whispered, avoiding eye contact. Others avoided me completely. They walked past my desk with careful steps, pretending to focus on their screens or files, pretending I wasn't there. I didn't resent them. I didn't need to. Their discomfort was natural. It was the first taste of accountability for underestimating someone, and then there were my so-called friends. The ones who had laughed the hardest, who had whispered behind my back, who had mocked me openly. They approached cautiously, their faces masks of uncertainty. They weren't sure if I would respond with anger, if I would mock them, if I would exact some dramatic retaliation. But I didn't. I simply allowed the results to speak for themselves. Actions, after all, speak louder than words. Every project I completed, every client interaction, every successful initiative became another proof point. They couldn't deny it, even if they wanted to. The work, the preparation, the quiet victories, they were undeniable. And slowly, respect returned, not the fake. Forced respect that comes from fear or obligation. But genuine acknowledgement of my abilities, my strength. And my determination. It was fascinating to watch the change. Subtle at first. A colleague asking my opinion without hesitation. A manager seeking guidance for a project. Someone quietly mentioning a past idea of mine that had finally succeeded. Little acknowledgements, small gestures of recognition. These tiny signs felt more powerful than any public applause. I realized something crucial during these days of observation. People rarely respect what they cannot understand. My former colleagues had laughed at me because they couldn't see the scope of my vision, the depth of my strategy, the careful planning that had gone unseen for so long. Now, seeing the results, they were forced to confront it, and with that confrontation came reflection for them. Perhaps, though, I didn't need it to validate myself. I understood that their reactions were not just about me. They were about their own misconceptions, their own failures to recognize potential where it existed. There were a few awkward moments. One person who had publicly mocked me in the past approached my desk. Their hands fidgeted nervously as they spoke. I just wanted to say, congratulations. I never thought. I looked up at them, calm, measured, and said, thank you. It took time, but it was worth it. No sarcasm. No gloating. Just truth. And in that simple acknowledgement, they understood the weight of their previous actions without me having to say a word about them. Some tried to rationalize my success. Oh, she had help, they murmured. It was luck. But luck had nothing to do with it. Every late night, every quiet strategy, every subtle connection, they hadn't seen it. And that was their mistake. I watched the dynamic shift. The laughter and whispers that had once been my prison began to fade. Instead, there were nods, quiet acknowledgments, and the rare, subtle smiles of people who finally saw me for who I truly was. It was in these moments that I felt a profound sense of satisfaction. Not revenge, not superiority, but fulfillment. I had taken control of my narrative. I had turned betrayal into motivation, mockery into strategy, and doubt into undeniable proof of my capabilities. And it wasn't just about them. Watching their reactions was secondary. The real triumph was internal. I had faced the humiliation, the betrayal, the doubt, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident than ever. I began to reflect on the lessons I had learned. First, patience is a weapon. The loudest, fastest reactions are rarely the most effective. Quiet planning, subtle influence, and strategic timing can shift outcomes more profoundly than any dramatic confrontation ever could. Second, resilience is more valuable than recognition. I had survived their mockery and betrayal not by fighting fire with fire, but by continuing my work, trusting in myself, and believing in my vision, even when no one else did. Third, true power is invisible until revealed. People underestimated me because they couldn't see the full picture. By staying composed, strategic, and patient, I allowed the truth to speak for itself. And finally, the most meaningful revenge is the transformation of self. I didn't need to destroy anyone or publicly shame them. My growth, my success, my quiet triumph, that was the ultimate outcome. And it was far more satisfying than anything I could have planned with anger or resentment. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, the office settled into a new rhythm. But this rhythm was different. The energy had shifted. I noticed colleagues now asking for my insights before major decisions. Teams sought my guidance. Even my so-called critics approached with a different attitude. Tentative but respectful. It was surreal to witness, yet deeply gratifying. Every glance, every interaction, every acknowledgement reminded me that I had reclaimed not just my place, but my power. And yet, through it all, I never lost my humility. I knew that the true victory wasn't in proving them wrong. It was in proving to myself that I could rise above the mockery, the betrayal, and the doubt. There were moments when someone would mention my name in a conversation about the old project, or the old rumor, and I'd hear a subtle hesitation in their voice. I didn't need to respond. The pause, the uncertainty, the realization that was enough, because the story was no longer about them. It was about me. I had faced laughter, sneers, betrayal, and doubt. I had felt anger, hurt, and fear. But I had transformed all of it into a carefully orchestrated journey that led to undeniable success. And in that transformation, I found something far more important than recognition. I found my own strength, my own confidence, and my own peace. The aftermath taught me that life often gives you two choices when faced with betrayal: succumb to bitterness or use it to fuel growth. I chose the latter, and in doing so, I realized that betrayal, when met with strategy, patience, and self-belief, can become the most powerful catalyst for change. I smiled quietly one afternoon, watching a former critic struggle to understand how I had achieved everything. I thought of all the laughter, all the whispered comments, all the subtle sabotages, and I understood how every single one had shaped me into someone far stronger than I would have been otherwise. Because respect, real respect, isn't demanded. It's earned. And I'd earned it not through confrontation, not through anger, but through unwavering commitment to myself, and my vision dawned as the days passed. The office slowly normalized. People moved on. Gossip faded. Projects continued. But beneath the surface, I knew the truth had settled in. I was no longer the person they had dismissed or mocked. I had stepped out of the shadows, quietly powerful and uncheckable. Looking back, I realized something important. Betrayal, mockery, and doubt are tests. Not just tests of skill or intellect or perseverance, but tests of character. They reveal who you really are when no one is watching, who you can trust, and how strong you truly are when faced with adversity. I had been blindsided, humiliated, and underestimated. People I called friends, colleagues, even some family members, they had mocked me, whispered behind my back, and assumed I would crumble. For a time, I questioned myself. Maybe they were right. Maybe I wasn't capable. Maybe all the effort I had put into building my career, my life, my dreams, had been for nothing. But here's what I learned. Their betrayal did not define me. Their laughter did not weaken me. Their underestimation, their doubts, their conspiracies, it only fueled the fire I had inside. I learned that revenge isn't about destruction. It isn't about shouting, humiliating, or tearing someone down. True revenge is quiet. True revenge is patience, strategy, and self-belief. It's about reclaiming your dignity, standing up for yourself, and showing the world that underestimation is dangerous. I didn't need to confront anyone with anger or rage. I didn't need to shout or cry or demand justice. I allowed my actions, my achievements, and the truth to speak for themselves. The revelation wasn't just about exposing them. It was about revealing my own strength. They laughed at me, yes. They whispered, they sneered, they plotted. But in the end, it was my persistence, my planning, my quiet determination, and my unwavering belief in myself that made them speechless. And that is the most profound lesson I learned. When you are underestimated, when people doubt your abilities, when betrayal cuts deep, the greatest weapon you can wield is yourself. Your resilience, your intelligence, your patience, your quiet, calculated, unstoppable force. I also learned something about human nature. People rarely respect what they cannot see or understand. My former colleagues, my so-called friends, they mocked me because they couldn't see the full picture. They couldn't understand the depth of my strategy, the careful planning, and the subtle power I had built behind the scenes. But the truth is always revealed. And when it is, respect follows, not forced, not fake, but real and undeniable. I realized that my secret, the one they thought would destroy me, was never really a secret of deceit. It was a secret of preparation, of foresight, of vision. It was a testament to what can happen when someone refuses to be broken by laughter, betrayal, or mockery. It was proof that persistence, even when invisible, can lead to the most powerful transformations and the most satisfying part. I didn't just reveal my secret to them. I revealed to myself just how powerful I truly am. I saw in myself a strength I had not fully recognized before: the ability to endure, to adapt, and to rise above the chaos created by others. I realized that life will always present obstacles, that betrayal is inevitable at times, and that mockery is often a reflection of someone else's insecurity, not your weakness. Through it all, I found something more valuable than success, more satisfying than recognition, a deep, unshakable belief in myself. A calm, quiet assurance that no matter how harshly life tests me, I have the power to endure, to overcome, and to thrive. I also learned the importance of timing. So often, we rush to respond to every slight, every insult, every whisper of doubt. But there is power in patience. There is strategy in observing, preparing, and waiting for the perfect moment to reveal your strength. When I finally presented my achievements, my plans, and my vision, it wasn't just a revelation, it was a statement that true power cannot be rushed. It is deliberate, quiet, and undeniable when finally revealed. And beyond all of this, I discovered the true meaning of dignity. To rise above mockery, to transform betrayal into motivation, to let persistence and skill speak louder than anger or revenge, that is dignity. That is self-respect. That is true victory. So if you are watching this, if you've ever been doubted, laughed at, or betrayed, remember this: the power is in your hands. Not in the mockery, not in the whispers, not in what others think of you, but in your ability to endure, to plan, and to rise. Don't waste energy on rage. Don't focus on the betrayal itself. Focus on yourself. Build quietly, plan carefully, and let your results speak louder than any insult. Let your success, patience, and resilience become the ultimate answer to anyone who ever doubted you. Because in the end, the most satisfying victories are not the ones that humiliate others. They are the victories that reveal to yourself just how strong, capable, and unstoppable you truly are. I learned that betrayal is not the end. It is an opportunity. Mockery is not a limit. It is a signal that you are underestimated. And underestimation, when met with preparation and belief in yourself, is nothing more than an invitation to rise higher than anyone expected. And so, I walk forward with calm confidence, knowing that I have faced laughter, betrayal, and doubt, and I have emerged not only victorious, but transformed. I have learned the power of patience, strategy, and self-belief. I have learned that the quietest, most deliberate actions can have the loudest impact. I have learned that true respect is earned, not demanded, and most importantly, I have learned this: no one can define your worth, limit your potential, or dictate your path except yourself. Looking back, I don't feel anger, resentment, or desire for revenge anymore. I feel clarity, empowerment, and peace. Because I have proven to myself that no matter what obstacles are thrown my way, no matter how cruel or dismissive others may be, I have the power to endure, to overcome, and to triumph. And that is a lesson I will carry for the rest of my life. Because at the end of the day, the true revelation was never about them, it was about me. And in that truth, if there's one lesson I want you to take from my story, it's this: never let anyone define your worth. Never allow laughter, betrayal, or doubt to weaken your resolve. Life has a way of testing us in ways we cannot predict. People will underestimate you. People will mock you. People you thought were allies may turn out to be betrayers. And sometimes it will hurt. It may sting. It may make you question yourself, your abilities, and even your dreams, but that is exactly when you must pause. Take a breath and remember one simple truth: your worth is yours. It is defined by your actions, your persistence, your integrity, and your courage. Not by the laughter of others, not by the whispers behind your back, not by the opinions of those who seek to diminish you. I learned that courage is not just about facing danger or speaking loudly in the moment. True courage is quieter. It is the courage to continue when you are mocked. The courage to stay true to your vision when others doubt you. The courage to rise above betrayal when your heart is heavy, when your spirit is tested, and when your patience feels like it's running thin. Patience, I discovered, is not weakness. It is power. Because when you act in haste, you let emotions control you. Anger, frustration, hurt, they can cloud judgment and lead to mistakes. But when you act with patience, you gain clarity. You gain control. You can observe, you can prepare, and you can plan. You can turn every slight, every whisper, every doubt into fuel for your own growth and transformation. And the greatest victories, those that leave a lasting impact, come not from reaction, but from strategy, patience, and persistence. Quiet confidence is the companion of patience. It is the calm in the storm, the steady hand in the chaos. While others are busy underestimating you, laughing at you, or attempting to hold you back, quiet confidence allows you to continue building, continue preparing, and continue believing in yourself without distraction. And here's the secret: the real triumph is not in showing them. You don't need to point out their mistakes, call them out, or humiliate them. They will see it anyway. Your success, your persistence, your quiet victories, they will notice, one way or another. And when they do, they will understand that underestimating you was their greatest error. But the most important part, the true victory lives inside you. The satisfaction comes not from their reactions, but from knowing that no matter what obstacles were thrown in your path, no matter how cruel the mockery, no matter how sharp the betrayal, you never wavered. You never stopped believing in yourself. You never abandoned your principles, your vision, or your dreams. It is a lesson I wish everyone could experience. The empowerment that comes from self-worth, the strength that comes from resilience, and the fulfillment that comes from patience and quiet confidence, because life will always have doubters. Life will always have those who seek to diminish you. But if you hold on to your courage, your patience, and your self-belief, you can turn even the harshest betrayal into a stepping stone towards success. Every setback, every insult, every laugh at your expense is an opportunity to rise higher, to grow stronger, and to prove not to them, but to yourself that you are capable of more than they ever imagined. Remember, the world may underestimate you, but that is its mistake, not yours. And the moment you stop letting their perception control your actions, the moment you stop seeking validation from those who doubted you, you gain freedom. True freedom. Freedom to be yourself, to pursue your dreams, and to achieve what you once thought impossible. So the next time someone laughs at you, the next time someone betrays you, the next time doubt clouds your path, pause, breathe, and remember your power. Remember your worth. Remember that patience, strategy, and quiet confidence are more powerful than anger, confrontation, or revenge. Stand tall. Build quietly. Persist relentlessly. And when the moment is right, let your actions speak. Because the truth, the work, and the success you've cultivated will always speak louder than words. And in that truth, you will find your ultimate victory. Not in proving them wrong, not in showing them, but in knowing deep inside that you never stopped believing in yourself. You never allowed their laughter to define you. You never allowed their betrayal to break you. And you never allowed doubt to dim your vision. That is the power of courage, patience, and self-worth. That is the lesson I carry with me every day. And if you take nothing else from my story, take this. The greatest triumph is not in making them see, it is in knowing with absolute certainty that you were never defeated in the first place. Because when you truly believe in yourself, no one else's opinion can ever change the path you are destined to walk.